Hi, everyone, and welcome to your Alaska Weather TV show. This is meteorologist Joel Curtis. Starting out with our lightning strikes today, I had a look at the BLM lightning at detection around 1 p.m. this afternoon, and there were some just widely isolated showers and thunderstorms all around the state, including the northeast end of the Brooks Range, also down into the Yukon Flats. A few bit north of Fairbanks, some in the 40-mile area, and then down to the Alaska Range on the west side, one not too far from Wasilla. But look at the cluster in Bristol Bay, and that all happened at about 7 o'clock this morning down there. So looking at our fire weather potential there, I've highlighted Sunday the 11th, and I wanted to show that we're in moderate risk conditions due to some warming and drying that we've got for the Tanana Valley East, Tanana Valley West, and Upper Yukon Valley. And so that's our outlook for the week there, and we can see that we're going to carry some moderate conditions on into Wednesday. Looking at our satellite image this morning, we've got an upper level low has really moving down from the northwest. It's bringing all that air, and you can see it has moved over Bristol Bay, also along the western sections of the state. There's a lot of reverse flow that's going up along the Alcan and into the Yakutat area. And also there's a series of really weak systems that are out in the western Bering Sea. So one more time, we'll run that loop. I couldn't see any real, there's some hints of some cells in Bristol Bay early this morning. So again, for today's weather, not a lot of organized frontal systems, even though the air is cold aloft and moving down from the northwest. They're yet to organize, but there's still some heavy rain out ahead of the system that's 995 millibars in the Bethel area. And that's moving toward the southeast. Showers around the troughs that are moving there. And some of our higher elevations, due to the low freezing levels, have got a little bit of light snow going on whenever a shower or some steady precipitation goes upslope. Then for tonight's weather, we've got a frontal system just starting to form around 1,000 millibar low that's moving into Bristol Bay. Still a few showers around in the state, but notice that the west end is getting drying, except that there's a cold front moving out of the northwest, and that's headed toward the north slope. Then for Saturday's weather, we've got 1,003 millibar low. Now it's down by Sitkinak Island. A frontal system has developed and wrapped around it, so there's warm air on the east side of that low and some heavier rain. A little bit of snow in the higher elevations, and then showers in behind that system. And then a weak high pressure system is built into the center of the Bering Sea. And then you can see that cold front approaching the north slope and some rain out ahead of it on Saturday. And then by Sunday, look at all the drying that's over the mainland portion of the state. We still have 1,001 millibar low down off of Kodiak Island and a frontal system wrapped around it. So there's heavier rain out in front of it, but just a few scattered showers around the state, and a 10-18 millibar high is built in over the Bering Sea. So now we're looking towards Saturday morning, and for our temperatures in southeast, we've got right around 50 degrees or so, a little bit lower at Yakutat, 47. And then for south central, in the mid 40s to mid to upper 40s for Saturday morning low temperatures. Then for our highs on Saturday afternoon, temperatures almost approaching 60, 62 at Ketchikan, and then 55 at Yakutat. But as you move over to south central, you can see now the high temperatures are actually ramping up into the 60s. Talkeetna, the farthest away from that cool air aloft, is 66 degrees. And then for Sunday morning, again, temperatures hovering around 50s for our lows in southeast Alaska, but moving over to south central, also hanging in there for the 40s. Gulf Canada will probably be a little bit clearer, so they're going to drop down to 41. And then for a high temperature Sunday afternoon, you can see, again, right around 60 degrees or so, except 56 for Sitka with a little onshore flow there, 57 for Yakutat, but 65 for Golconda and 70 for Talkeetna on Sunday afternoon, even though we got in the mid-60s for the Kenai Peninsula and down to Kodiak. So then for our low temperatures Saturday morning for the northern areas, in the 30s and touching about 40 at Dead Horse. But then as you get to further south, mid-40s is a real common, 48 for a low for Fairbanks and 47 for a low for Nome. And then for high temperatures in the afternoon, look at those 40s and 50s for the North Slope, but as soon as you get south of the Brooks Range, well into the 60s, 73 for Fort Yukon, 70 for Fairbanks. And then for Sunday morning, we can see that we're now down in the 30s as that front has passed Point Hope over to Utiagavik. But then as you get down south of the Brooks Range again, temperatures well into the 40s and 49 for Fairbanks. So Sunday afternoon, high temperatures now touching into the 50s for the North Slope, 56 for Dead Horse, but it's still some 40s as you can see along the Chukchi Sea. Still, as you get further south, again, warmer temperatures, 75, which is ramping up our fire danger for the Yukon Flats for Fort Yukon, and 74 for Fairbanks. So you can see I get a lot of drying to the east, but note those 50s along the west coast and then up to 61 as you get a little further south. And then for our low temperatures Saturday morning, for the southwest Alaska, all in the 40s, a couple touching about 50 or so, but mostly in the mid-40s, 43 for the Pribilofs and 47 for Bethel. And then high temperatures Saturday afternoon, well into the 60s as we get up further north along the southwest. But look at those 50s all the way down into Bristol Bay and then all along the Alaska Peninsula, 51 for the Pribilofs. Looks like about a 56, 57 for King Salmon area. So still a little on the cool side. And then Sunday morning, again, temperatures all in the 40s, except for 152 there in southwest Alaska. And then for Sunday afternoon, now we're ramping up. McGrath gets up to 71, and then temperatures well into the 60s as you get inland. But again, almost 60 or right around 60 or so as you go out the Alaska Peninsula, and 54 for the Pribilofs. So that's it for our public segment today. So keep track of those thunderstorms. We'll be watching to see if anything develops there. And then for our fire danger, as a recap, looking for a warming and drying for the Tanana Valley and also for the Yukon Flats. Thanks for tuning in.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hi everyone, and now for our aviation weather. Starting out with a flying weather Saturday morning, we've got extensive IFR along the North Slope, also the Bering Sea, including the Pribilofs, Aleutian Islands, on up the Alaska Peninsula, including Kodiak Island, southern Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, and then some of the inside areas of the Panhandle. Then for Saturday afternoon, we got an area of thunderstorms from the eastern Brooks Range all the way down to the Wrangell St. Elias, possibility all across the central eastern interior. Also, we have IFR conditions out over the Bering Sea, including the Pribilofs, most of Kodiak Island, southern Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, and then inland a bit from the North Gulf Coast. For Sunday morning, we've got IFR again along the North Slope from Point Hope to Utiagavik. Also the western, the Aleutians and Bering Sea, but just missing the Pribilofs for marginal VFR there. VFR across the interior, and then some IFR conditions for Kodiak Island, southern Kenai Peninsula and Prince William Sound, and the inside waters of the Panhandle. For Sunday afternoon, again, that IFR retreats in the western Bering Sea, offshore from the North Slope, and also offshore out in the Gulf. So Anatuvik Pass on Saturday, VFR, but thunderstorms building up to the east. Adigan Pass, VFR, but some thunderstorms in the area in the afternoon. Lake Clark, IFR, and Merrill Pass, IFR becoming marginal VFR, expect moderate turbulence all day. For Rainy Pass, IFR becoming marginal VFR. Windy Pass, marginal VFR becoming VFR. For Saturday, for Isabel Pass, marginal VFR becoming VFR, but isolated thunderstorms in the area. Mentasta Pass, VFR with some marginal VFR along the south entrance and isolated thunderstorms. Tahitna Pass, marginal VFR. And for Portage Pass, IFR, and then expect moderate turbulence all day due to strong easterly winds. Chilkoot and White Pass, marginal VFR becoming IFR. For freezing levels, note the cold air over the mainland portion of the state and extending into the Panhandle, some down to the surface for the Wrangell-St. Elias Mountains, but around 2,000 feet for South Central, also along the North Slope, and then all the way up to 10,000 feet over the central Bering Sea, and then down toward Vancouver Island. Then for icing on Saturday, we've got one area of considerable moderate associated with the thunderstorms, 8,000 to 16,000 feet. Some isolated moderate along the North Slope and Brooks Range, 3,000 to 6,000 feet. And then in the Gulf, we have two areas of considerable moderate along the Kenai Peninsula and western Prince William Sound, as well as the Chillicothe Strait area, 6,000 to 12,000 feet. For a jet stream on Saturday, big trough dipping down over the state, 105 knot northeasterlies over the southwestern Alaska, and then coming around the northwesterlies as we cross the Alaska Peninsula to 95 knots, and then picking up again to 90 knots as we get to the Alcan. For 9,000-foot winds on Saturday, we have a low circulation over Chillicothe Strait, 60 knots offshore in the Gulf of Alaska, but note all the 40s that are coming up into the southern Kenai Peninsula and the Portage Pass area, and actually over the Chugach Mountains as well. 30 knots northerlies over the Bering Sea. And then on Saturday, the 3,000-foot wind, we still have that circulation at the southern end of Kodiak Island, 50 knots across the Lake Iliamna area. Also, we have 40 knots coming into Prince William Sound, as well as 40 knots offshore out in the Gulf, 25 knot northeasterlies off the southwestern Alaska. And then for our turbulence on Saturday, we have below 4,000 feet, two areas of considerable moderate, one in the Point Hope area, other one Bering Strait area. And then we have considerable moderate extensive area all across southwestern Alaska, all the way up into Prince William Sound, southern Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and the Alaska Peninsula, below 8,000 feet. And last but not least, we do have some below 5,000 feet, considerable moderate over the western Aleutians. So be safe out there. Note the buildups in the afternoon, particularly if you're flying in the eastern central part of the state, and look out for moderate turbulence.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining me once again is Eric Stevens from the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, or GINA, based at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Eric, welcome back to the show.
Well, Dave, it's great to be back. Thanks for inviting us again.
Sure thing. And today we want to talk about identifying burn scars. That would be the burned up area after a wildfire when the flames and the smoke are gone. We can see it if you drive by it on the roadway, of course, but from satellite, we can also identify those places on the land, right?
You know it. You know that expression, ouch, that's going to leave a mark?
Yeah.
After you bang your knee getting out of the car.
Oh yeah.
Well, the ouch, it's going to leave a mark, that also applies to the landscape. Whenever a wildfire ravages through, it's going to leave a mark on the landscape. After a wildfire burns out, this is called a burn scar.
Okay.
And you can ask yourself, well, that's interesting. We can see a burn scar from space. Right. Then the question is, well, why does that matter?
Okay.
Who cares?
Yeah, fire's over.
Right, the fire is over. We don't need to worry about this anymore. It turns out you kind of do, because burn scars are important. There's this old rule of thumb in the weather business that flood follows fire.
Okay.
The action of the fire in killing off the vegetation, in baking, kiln drying the landscape a little bit, can hinder the land's ability to absorb rainfall. So if you have a fire, especially if it's in complex mountainous terrain.
Right.
This is classic in California. It can happen somewhat in Alaska too. You get a wildfire in steep, hilly, or mountainous terrain, rips off all the vegetation off the landscape. Then 6 months later, there's a big rainstorm, and you get a flash flood in that area. So flood can follow fire. That's why you got to know where the burn scars are. Secondly, a fire needs fuel to maintain itself. So if there's an old burn scar left over from a year or two ago, and then another summer later here in Alaska in the interior, it's a big wildfire season. If there's a fire advancing toward an old burn scar, well, guess what? That old burn scar can be tougher terrain for that new fire to get through because there's not as much fuel in that burn scar. So they almost act like a natural fire break. These are a couple of reasons why you need to know where those burn scars are. Alaska Fire Service has limited resources. They want to put their people and their equipment where it does the most good. They need to know, well, this is an area where there's no burn scar. We better put people here because that fire could really run.
So really important for weather forecasters and fire weather forecasters for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But then how do weather satellites actually detect those burn scars?
Ah, good question.
Thanks.
Well, let's turn the Wayback Machine to the summer of 2015. That was a very active year. Got a picture here taken up in the White Mountains. This is one of the fires in progress that summer, and if you look real close, you can almost see Frodo throwing the ring into the volcano there. So that's quite the vision. Well, let's look at a visible image. Here we are in Alaska's interior. This is before the fires got out of the cage in early summer of 2015. Let's zoom into the western interior here. Again, this is a weather satellite image of visible light, what the human eye can see. We're into the middle reach of the Yukon Valley there in the western interior, Galena area. And this is just a beautiful visible day. Nothing much going on. It's in early June before the fires really got active. But then in 2015, the fires got loose, especially in that western interior. Here's another image. The same satellite pass as that visible image, but now we're not quite looking at visible light.
Very different.
There's a slight change here. This image incorporates something called the veggie band. 0.86 micron wavelength. The micron's very tiny, but that wavelength responds to vegetation, the chlorophyll. So trees and grasses reflect that part of the electromagnetic spectrum back to the satellite. And so the satellite sees that. When signal comes at that wavelength to the satellite, we know, there's some vegetation growing there. This is great. You can identify coastlines so easily because you go from vegetation to water. Turns out if you have a burn scar, guess what? You burned away the vegetation, so that's going to show up. We're going to do a before, during, and after kind of look here. And so we're looking at before. So in this image, we got a lot of green out there. That's wonderful. Another fun thing about this kind of imagery is you can see down in the Alaska Range in the southeast corner of the image, it's blue. That's glaciers and snow in the mountains. So this is not really what the human eye can see. This is these wavelengths are beyond human vision, but we've made them look certain colors. So the vegetation looks green. Now let's look at that same kind of satellite recipe, but during the fires. This is in July. The fires are loose. You can see the smoke in the middle of the image, the smearing look of the smoke, and then we can see some clouds that are white. Icy clouds are blue. So this is in July of 2015. The fires are doing their thing. We're burning up millions of acres. Now let's go to September. The fires are out. The audience has left the theater. You know, the event's over, right? We're done. But guess what? Now look at those brown patches.
Look at that.
All of those places are where the fire has burned away the vegetation. So you can see where the fires were. You can add up these perimeters, get acreage burned and such. And so that's good to know. Now remember, flood follows fire, and these are also natural fire breaks. So you need to know where these guys are. In the course of the 2015 summer season, we went from before with not much burn scar in this area to just a couple months later, we can see so much burn scarring on the landscape. What's interesting too about the satellite and looking at burn scars is you realize that burn scars are the gift that keeps on giving. You can forget that a couple of years ago maybe there was a fire in a certain area, but the satellite won't forget. So in the summertime we get wildfires in Alaska, but guess what? In the visible imagery here we can see the burn scars just a little bit, but they're not as prominent as in that veggie band. but then you can't see them at all if you cover them up with snow, right?
Exactly.
So here's an image from the middle of the winter time,
wow.
and snow on the ground by this recipe looks blue. Again, these are wavelengths of light that the human eye can't really see. We're getting up into the infrared, near infrared, and the way we've assigned colors is if there's snow on the ground or there's a glacier, it looks blue, kind of intuitive. So this is early April of the following year, 2016.
Okay.
We're just about to get into breakup. We got a lot of snow on the ground, and now it's all going to melt. And as the snow melts, then you get our final image here. Doesn't this look familiar? This looks like a lot of what we saw in September of the previous summer. So this is the spring of the next year. The fires themselves might not have overwintered, they're gone, but the fire scar does. And as the snow melts away, and then you have breakup, and then you have green up, whenever the leaves come out, the grass comes back, except in the burned areas, they're having a tough time because everything got burned off the previous year. So you can see these scars even the next summer, multiple years. It depends on what kind of vegetation there is. You know, some of the tussocky tundra grasses, they'll grow back really quick, but to get a forest to come back, that'll take much longer. So these burn scars, eventually the landscape will fill in the burn scar. It will heal itself, if you want to use that metaphor. But for the next few years, you can still keep track of these on satellite. And again, the reason we want to do that is that the burn scar can facilitate a flood, and it can act like a fire break. So there you are, the
Fascinating tools. So if you're a weather satellite and you're looking at my bowl of vegetables here, you might be able to pick out which one's the pea, which one's the tomato, and which one's the carrot, and apply that information precisely to whatever it is you're working on there. That is really fascinating stuff, that we have that capability from so high above the planet Earth, and Alaska for that matter.
Yep, eat your veggies.
Yes, definitely. I think I will. I'm hungry. Thanks so much for joining us again, Eric, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. We'll see you right here next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And now for your marine forecast, starting out with today's sea ice edge. The ice continues to melt and retreat and is pulling back on schedule. So looking for Saturday's marine forecast for the southeast Alaska waters. On the inside, 10 to 15 knots of various directions, seas up to 3 feet. And on the outside waters, we've got 10 ranging up to 25 knots as you get over to Cape Suckling, and seas up to 6 feet on the outside. For Sunday's marine forecast, southeast winds 10 to 15 knots on the inside waters, and 15 ranging up to gale force 35 knots, seas really ramping up with 14 feet off of Cape Suckling. So for south central waters on Saturday, southeast winds 25 to 30 knots on the outside, seas up to 6 feet. Prince William Sound, easterlies 25, seas 3 feet. And for Cook Inlet, 25 to 30 knots out of the northeast or east, seas up to 9 feet down by Augustine. And then for Sunday's marine forecast, gale force on the outside, 35 to 40 knots, seas all the way up to 14 feet on the outside. For Prince William Sound, northeasterlies 30, seas 7 feet. And in Cook Inlet, 25 to gale force 35 knots and seas up to 13 feet. For the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, starting out with a mixed bag circulating around the low, 25 knots on the Pacific side, seas up to 8 feet, and 15 knots, 5 feet on the Bering Sea side. And then for Sunday, that low establishes out in the Gulf, so we have northerlies in Chillicothe Strait, gale force 35 knots, seas 12 feet. But toward the middle of the low, 15 to 20 knots, seas up to 7 feet. And then on the Bering Sea side, 15 to 25 knots, seas up to 4 feet. For the Aleutian chain, westerlies ramping up 15 to 20 knots. On the Bering Sea side, seas up to 6 feet. On the Pacific side, seas up to 8 feet. And then on Sunday, things start to come around, but lighten up on the winds. 10 to 15 knots and seas up to 5 feet on the Bering Sea side and up to 5 feet on the Pacific side. For the West Coast on Saturday, starting out with 15 to 20 knots, seas up to 6 feet on the outside, And then for Sunday, winds circulating, still responding to the low in the Gulf. Northerlies down in the southern Bering Sea off of Makoriak, 20 knots, seas 4 feet, and then lightens up in the Pribilos, 10 knots, seas 3 feet. For the Arctic coastline on Saturday, kind of windy as that cold front approaches. Southerlies up to 30 knots on the north slope, seas up to 12 feet in the open waters. And then through the Bering Strait, winds 15 to 30 knots and seas all the way up to 11 feet. And then for Sunday, westerlies along the north slope, 10 to 15 knots. And then in the Bering Strait area and Chukchi Sea, a mixed bag of directions, winds up to 20 knots and seas up to 5 feet. So recapping tonight's weather, we've got that low moving down out of the northwest. It's about 1,000 millibars tonight in the Bristol Bay area. And one thing mariners should note is that we had lightning at Pilot Point about 3:30 this afternoon. It's possible that some of that lightning could drift over and get in the Chillicothe and Sitkinak Island areas later tonight. And then there's fronts forming up in the Gulf side. Also a cold front approaching the north slope from the west on tonight. And then, as you can see, that thing moves closer to the north slope on Saturday. Also, the low in the Gulf near Sitkinak Island, 1,003 millibars, really starts to shape up with a front wrapped around it, including some warm air moving up into the North Gulf area with some heavier rain, a few snowflakes at the ridge tops. And then for Sunday's weather, that low in the Gulf matures off of Kodiak Island. It's about 1,001 millibars. It's got a front wrapped around it. Some heavier rain on the east or northern side. A few flakes over the higher terrain, but a lot of drying on Sunday for mainland Alaska. Thanks for tuning in, and stay safe out there.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.